Welcome to the Conscious Economics Podcast. I'm your host, Rhiannon Roseland. I'm a serial entrepreneur and social innovator. I like to gather people from all different walks to talk about what I call the conscious economy. I believe that we can create a more equitable system, one that honors the well-being of people, the well-being of the planet, the well-being of business, and includes art and creativity. Join us each week as we tackle a different intersection of this big but critical conversation.
Happy Earth Day, Earth Week. For those of you that are celebrating, thinking about our planet right now, this is another throwback episode. I got to sit down in 2020 with the incredible art activist Anya Mielniczek. She's a friend of the brand, of course. She's the famous designer behind our climate change piano, which you all are going to be seeing more of. And so I just thought it was a perfect time to repost this conversation that we had. It really centers around her process and philosophy around art activism, the tools that she uses, and her beautiful connection with nature. So I hope you enjoy this, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us on the Lunar Club today, the podcast. I've been wanting to sit down and talk to you because I think that you are a really important channel and a really important voice for what is happening right now on the planet. And I know that you know that a little bit of our philosophy is, it's all this new economy kind of outlook. And we really see the foundational pillars of the new economy to be people, planet, profit, and art working in harmony. And so, I would identify or call you as sort of a social change artist or, an activist artist, an economic artist almost. Like you are really, I think, influenced by so many pieces of the systemic kind of breakdown that we're witnessing right now. So that's how I would define you, but I would love for you to define yourself and tell me and our listeners about your work and how you really see it from your perspective.
Thank you so much. I love how you really just kind of described and how you view me, because honestly, that's more or less exactly it. I'm really influenced by the world around me, what I'm seeing happen with us socially, systemically, in the environment, how that all relates to the environment. And really, truly, like my biggest inspiration is our natural world and our relationship with it, or kind of, I think, the disconnect that I'm seeing so much happening with our relationship to it. So I really do think that, us as humanity moving forward, we really have to bring that connection closer to heart, because we're nothing without nature. She's like our provider. She sustains us. She nurtures us. And I think innately, just like as a human being, I love her so much. I am definitely like an earthling. Like I love the forest. I find that every time I see something with whales or elephants on the news, like a little piece of my soul dies when I feel like we are not taking care of her and her animals as the way that we should, because it all relates. And like what you're doing with the conscious economics, I think that's so powerful, because it's true, like everything is connected. So my art really does revolve around trying to give nature a voice, really creating pieces that tell a deeper story with regards to, if it's animal extinction or, water pollution, air pollution, anything that I can just kind of like voice my concerns about that are happening currently.
And let's talk about the tactical way that you do that, because you are using trash and you're using the repercussion of this system to create that voice for our mother, Gaia. And I think it's just it's so profound. Like I'm getting activated just thinking about it. Like I just feel, it's really, really special. So talk about your process a little bit.
For sure. So my process, honestly, it really is all over the place. I'm not an artist that just has like one style and has just done that style over and over again. For me, that's also been like a little bit of like almost like a struggle for me sometimes, just because I feel like I've needed to kind of mold myself into one specific thing. But truly, I work along many branches. So trash is one of those things. And for me, the trash element really is an interesting aspect of my practice. I'm not really sure how it started. I think it was always something that I was, as a child, also growing up. I like little things. Like I've always made bracelets or crafted or just gotten like materials, and like I like collections. So I think as a kid, I can relate to also collecting like coins or bookmarks, just random things. And one day I started to see litter, like as in bubblegum wrappers, candy wrappers, just the foil. The different wrappers in themselves have this beautiful quality that sometimes like they're shiny, sometimes, you know, how you can fold them, they have like this reflective like gold property. So I started to kind of like look at trash in a way where I'm like, this is a valuable material, and we consume so much as a society, and like all these little pieces, be it like gum wrappers, chocolate wrappers, even tea tags. If you think about the billions amount of like tea tags we throw out a year, that becomes like mountains. So I started to be really interested in like just these little bits of pieces of litter. And I found that when I can like shape them, it's really, I find with trash in general, when we infuse an element like an object, piece of paper, paint, whatever, and you infuse it with human energy, whether you organize it, you put a fold into it, it takes on a different energy than when it's just like strewn across, you know, like a table before it's thrown in the garbage. So I find like even when you look at a messy room, when you organize your materials, they become beautiful. I feel like organization makes stuff beautiful. So really, I'm in a way just organizing garbage to make it aesthetically pleasing.
Well, there's so many things in what you just said, so I'd love to explore some of it. So one thing that really comes forward to me is this idea of, you know, creating value or putting value back into things that society has deemed valueless. And, you know, most of the time people see trash and garbage and they don't think, you know, about it as being, you know, a material that could be repurposed to make something beautiful. And I think that that is part of the conscious economy. We're kind of coming into this space where we're trying to understand how to repurpose not only materials, but ourselves. How do we create new value streams in the marketplace? And I see what you're doing as you're starting a conversation around that in a very deep and profound way. And you're providing a lot of fodder for deep philosophical conversation around some of those things, which is really cool. The other thing that I think that you do really well is there's this, the system is everywhere, right? So, you know, when we look at what we're confronting right now, you know, colonialism, the patriarchy, and that impacts all of us. It's, you know, all genders and identities, you know, whether we're women, we're men, we are embodying that system. It's programmed into our bodies. It's, you know, if we think about the epigenetics of it, it's been in our ancestry, and we continue to perpetuate it unless we kind of awaken to this idea that it's a program and that we need to unlearn it or reprogram it. And so when I think about this idea of the system imposing itself on art and creativity, and it really has, it's determined who can be creative and who can't. It's determined what art is and what art isn't. And, you know, there's a lot of politics around art and who gets to say what and whose pieces are deemed valuable. And so again, as we confront these things in this new time, in this new age, and what you're doing is you're calling it sort of fine art, but then you're mixing like grunge art and garbage into what has traditionally been deemed like the pure and the respectable. And, you know, you would pay so much money to go to these particular schools to be trained. And that is the fluidity of what you're doing. And that space in the center that you're creating is you're opening a door for voices and people and ideas and themes to break apart the system, just by like the very nature of the way that you're kind of alchemizing these things together. And I know that that's kind of a statement in and of itself, but my question really is, how is the system in your mind imposing itself on creativity and art? And like, what do you think about that? And how can we as a collective transform that process?
I think that's an amazing question. You're right. The system very much imposes itself on artists and who can make what and who makes it kind of even as an artist. And so even just the thought that, you know, my art has the potential that it is working its way into disrupting that system is really exciting. But I think the one thing that we can do, creatives can do, social media is a huge leverage point. And I think now, before artists really had to go through the gallery, they had to go, maybe through like the gallery manager. Now you see artists that are really creating their own art in their own categories entirely. And it's really through social media because they're able to build a community. They're able to build a voice. They can do their Instagram stories and really create a narrative behind their inspiration, their practice, the materials they're using, why they're using them. And I really think what the system is now being challenged by is honestly truly social media because it's in our hands. And because it's in our hands, it's like this amazing key to really transforming what used to be into something completely new now. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, I'm really trying to now navigate social media more in that way. I am an introverted person most days. So for me, even navigating social media, sometimes like I need to take like a serious pause. And sometimes I put like all of my energy into it. So that's its own thing entirely as well. But, you know, I do see the outcomes when I'm pouring myself into social media. I'm creating those stories, I'm creating those narratives, and I'm really allowing my community to really see the ideas behind my process. And in that, I actually do see more of an understanding. I see more of a connection. And I do think innately, like, times are really shifting. Like, I started creating work with garbage. Literally, my first garbage series was called Garbage. And it was just these indie rappers that were collaged onto like a piece of 8x11 inch paper. I showed it my thesis year in 4th year for my graduating show. And then it was like people would look at the work and be like, oh, this is interesting, this is neat. But now just seeing over the last 8 years, this whole conversation around our environment really start to take precedence. Like, I'm seeing more of this conversation in the news finally. I'm seeing more artists creating pieces and sculptures out of plastics, like, you know, in Spain and in South America. Like, we're seeing more of this art and this kind of, this conversation come through. So now I see when people look at my work, I see there's more of an interest. I'm seeing more of a population now seeing the value in repurposing work or repurposing materials in a way that, you know, we can create art out of it. And art, at the end of the day, it really is anything. And it's unfortunate that there is still like a system in place that kind of deems what's fine art, what can sell at certain prices. But I mean, we make all of this stuff up. So I'm really excited about the future because, I mean, things are changing. So I definitely see that.
Hold that thought. We have a quick word from our partners before going back to the episode. This podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, RBC Investees. Backed by expert human advisors, RBC Investees is a smart, online, automated investment service that allows you to invest with low effort and low cost.
Open your first RBC Investees account and pay no management fees for your first year. Plus, start investing with as little as $100. Simply visit rbcinvestees.com/getinvesting and sign up using promo code AA407.
And now back to the episode. Let's talk about that narrative around the struggling artist, or this idea that, you know, to pursue art as a career, as, you know, your life's work is a challenge, or this idea that it's always going to be a challenge in some ways, and only the few, you know, there's only a few spaces for those who can't, and otherwise, you know, you're kind of destined for a struggle in some way. And I think that that's so wrong. And I think that, again, we have to unlearn these beliefs that have been really imposed on us. Like, who's to say that that is truth? And I just wonder, when you decided to pursue art and, you know, completely put your life into this particular path, was that ever a choice in your mind? Like, did you ever think about those things, about the economic side of that? And yeah, how did you overcome it?
Oh, 100%. Again, thank you for asking this question, because this is actually something that I've been really trying to pursue and kind of investigate, because down the line, I would love to also, you know, my idea is that in the future, I really do create more of like a academy or like a mentorship style program for emerging artists, or artists that just really need some sort of support, because I feel like this struggling artist mentality is something that is literally sabotaging creatives. And it's definitely something that sabotaged me, because I think it's part of also like the system. It's like, I definitely grew up, and when I relate it or chat with other creatives, this conversation around like, yes, the struggling artist, like, how are you going to make a living? How are you going to sustain a family? How are you going to have like, you know, money for when you retire? Like, it's a serious like negative belief system that's in place. And I think it's really bogging a lot of artists down and really limiting their potential to get out there and create, because I think I'm a really big believer that like really truly like you create your reality. So like your thoughts turn into what you see and what you do and what you have. And I think if our thoughts are really being navigated by things like, I can't make it, like, I'm not going to have enough money, I'm going to be struggling, then that's really what's going to be happening. And it's really just breaking through that personal narrative. So I think what needs to really take place is like just this shift and this break from this old paradigm of thinking that it's really hard and you're going to be struggling, because you can be, and that's what we've been fed. And I can see those thought patterns and thought processes in a lot of our heads and a lot of like the artist community, but we got to step away from that. It's really taking control of the thoughts that we're having. You know, when I even enter like circles where I hear like my friends chatting, other creatives that, you know, they're so broke and, you know, because it's like the artist life, I'm like, you gotta stop saying that.
100%.
Like, your words are so powerful and everything is energy. So it's like, it's really about, you know, embodying also the abundance that you want to feel and have as a creative. And that's so possible. So for me right now, I'm kind of on this path where it's like, I really want to start to master my energy, because I think if you can master your energy, you really master your life, and it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. So yeah, I definitely think there's a really negative narrative right now with the thought process within the creative industry. I mean, I think a lot of us are being really negative in the way that we're thinking, but there's so much literature, there's so many resources, there's so many like, you know, workshops and schools that are just teaching people to just think in a different way and to really cut out these negative thought processes or automatic habitual beliefs that really run their game.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more and everything that you're saying. And I feel like, you know, as we challenge all kinds of different notions and belief systems and thought patterns right now, so even this idea of, you know, women being in leadership roles, we perpetuate what we believe. And I've been saying this for so long, like I hold the biases of other people and then I act them out and I perpetuate them out. And, you know, if we really want systemic change, we have to start from our internal space within. It's so, so true. And I think that as we enter into the new economy and into this, you know, Aquarian age, energy is really a currency. And so how we use and manipulate our own energy and be able to cultivate that is what is going to actually, it's going to move things in a different way. And I think that we're just starting to tap into that, and that, you know, that statement in and of itself is not woohoo like it used to be, or, you know, crazy. I want to talk a little bit about the convergence of art and business, because we're kind of going on to this theme. And the first thing I think that, you know, is really interesting is this idea of an artist not seeing themselves as a business person. But in the end of the day, an artist is an entrepreneur. And, you know, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and, you know, my business and the way that I design my businesses and the way that I design that infrastructure is my art. And so I am, you know, very, very interested in challenging this idea or this notion that art and business is separate, that, you know, you either are like working for the man or you're a creative. I really think that it's the space in between where those things merge is where we see the new economy, you know, the ground base of that. What do you think about the convergence of art and business? What can business bring to art, and what can art bring to business?
Ooh, okay. Well, I mean, this is definitely something that for me, at going into this world being like, I'm an artist, I definitely really pushed business away for so long. And honestly, this is a realization that like really hit me probably hard in the last year, even though I knew that I was, you know, doing my business, but it was like this, I don't know if it was my ignorance or maturity, or it was just like my rebellious nature of like, I just want to do my art. Like, I don't want to deal with all that, even though like, yes, I'm invoicing. Yes, I'm doing like, you know, the calls, the emails, like the quotes, whatever. It's like putting everything together, doing my marketing, but still it was like this dissociation from like, this is me, this is my business kind of thing. And I love how you put like, you know, you being a serial entrepreneur and that everything you do within itself is your art. And so I feel for me, this realization really came along of finding almost like the joy in, you know, doing like a spread on my Instagram, let's say, where I'm showing my art that's for sale. Before I would kind of, again, it was like a mental space that I was in where I was like, ooh, I don't want to do sales because like I'm just an artist. It was really changing my perspective around like, no, honestly, like I love my art. I'm really proud of it. I would love to share it with the world. And you know, it's awesome if someone has a piece of mine in their home. So it was almost more like switching like this kind of like business mentality where I think I was struggling with like the sales, like being almost like sleazy in a way, to like being something like I'm literally just excited to share my art with the world. So for me, it was just like, I think again, my mindset around what business is and how that relates to my art. Before I had it very like separate, and then really just for me changing my feeling around the way that I was pursuing like the sales, I guess. I think I was having a challenge with the sales, but everything else besides that in my business was just like, I really enjoy the organization and more or less communicating, connecting with people. But there were certain elements that kind of held me off. And now it was just like reworking my perspective around it. And in that, I felt like there is an art here, because it doesn't have to be like super black and white or kind of stark. It can be more fun. But I was just creating that in my own head.
I think that just hearing you as a successful artist say those words and for other people to hear what you're saying is such medicine right now, because this is it. This is the crux of the system, and how even in ways that we don't realize, it's holding us back. So this idea of, an artist rejecting the business side of it is, again, letting the system win. It's saying like, oh, I think what I'm doing is valuable enough to put all of my time and heart and passion into it, but it's not valuable enough for me to ask for money for it, or it's not valuable enough for me to be able to be, abundantly taken care of, so I can continue to create this space to channel out this piece or this art. And so again, as we redefine those things, and we redefine what business means, we redefine what the economy means. This has been one particular system that was designed and orchestrated by very few in an infrastructure that was, a triangle, a pyramid with a tiny bunch at the top. But as we flip that triangle on its head and we say, let the mass decide what business is, let the mass decide what art is, let us decide, what that exchange and what value and currency really is, we can start to break apart all of these pieces, which is what's so fucking radical about this time that we find ourselves in, right? And I think that, and obviously I recognize the privilege. My business has been hit so hard by the pandemic. I'm in the live events, industry, but I also recognize the privilege of this time, and not everybody's had that, but I have been able to have more time for myself and be able to kind of sit with myself and be able to, open myself up to what is coming next. And this kind of leads me into your process. So would you say that when you have a piece coming or a collection coming, that you are channeling that through you? What does your process look like, and how do you keep yourself clear to receive what's coming through?
Oh, this again, it really varies. For me, my process starts sometimes it can be something I see on the news, from a documentary, something that really moves me and inspires me in the news. Recent events with like the Black Lives Matter movement, that was huge. So around that time too, I really actually just got off of social media, because I think with everything that was happening with regards even to the pandemic, to like there's like oil spills in 2 places in the world, and there's just so much happening energetically in the world that I'm like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And in what way can I best use my voice, my platform, to bring awareness to any or all of these situations? So that's one way that my process starts. It's really just feeling into everything that's happening around me. When it comes to my material work, sometimes, I live in the suburbs just outside Toronto, and there is so much litter here. I don't understand. Like, these are, people pay big money to live in these suburbs, and like I just don't understand how people pollute so easily. It's just disgusting. So that's like, as you can probably feel and tell, like that really gets me going. So that's another part of my process. And it's almost just like when a piece comes, it's like, what hits me the hardest in that moment, and what is it the first thing that I need to express? When it comes to, I'd say, private commissions or public pieces that I just get a job for and there's a deadline, then there's usually parameters around a certain theme. And when it comes to that, then I always try to, take my own spin to still utilize my voice and my interest in that work. So yeah, the process really does change from project to project, but on the personal side, it really comes from what's happening around me and what I just really need to express in the moment.
I think that, listening about an artist's process is going to become an incredibly valuable thing in the marketplace, because again, when we look at the transformation of our economy and our systems, and we move to this age of automation and machine, the one thing that I think has true human value is our ability to create, is our innate human creativity. And I think that we all house this and hold this, and it just comes out in different branches and different forms. And so my heart really wants to be able to hold a mirror up to every single person in, society right now and show them the artist that is inside of them, because we need to evolve as people right now, and we need to embrace this idea that every single part of what is here has to be kind of reworked or alchemized in some way. So our greatest project, the greatest commission that we, ever have had is before us right now. And this is that time. We're stepping into that time. And so again, when I think about people that are in, a corporate situation, or, folks that I know that are working on Bay Street, and there's this idea of wanting to be creative in business or come up with the next great, idea or product or whatever else. But creativity cannot be forced, and creativity cannot be just like, snap your finger and here it is. You have to really make space for that, whether it's space in your life, like just for you to be able to be so open that when everything's coming up and surging during the pandemic, enough to close your social media account down because your energy is that sensitive. You've cultivated that sensitivity. You've cultivated that energetic sensitivity to be able to do what you do. And it's a very, very important aspect of where we're going next. So what do you think of this idea of the tables kind of turning, or this idea of one day all the bankers coming in like desperately wanting to hear from you on how you do what you do? Like what would that feel like for you as an artist to see the table turn and to see the system come beg to you? How do I heal? How do I fix it? What would you say if you had a bunch of systemers in front of you right now? What would your advice be on how to cultivate that?
Well, I think you said it yourself right now. It's like, we all are creative. We are innately creative beings. We were born through creativity and like every element like of what we like do in life really is creative. And I think what's stopping a lot of us right now is that, let's say not artists, but maybe bankers, that it's like, you don't have to be like an artist to be creative. Like, And my advice really would be for those that would come to me, it can literally just be like journaling in the morning. It could literally just be like doing a little dance when you're brushing your teeth. I think creativity for me is, again, it comes back to energy. It's moving energy, it's processing energy, it's sitting with energy. And I think energy, again, runs our world and it really shapes our reality. And I think for us to be like in a good space and to be really evolving and moving forward, I think it's really aligning and tuning into like our true self, our true energy, like what brings us joy, what brings us happiness. And if it's like, releasing just like stagnant thoughts or whatever in the morning on a piece of paper with your pen, awesome. If it is just doing like that little jig while you're brushing your teeth just to like let loose, like awesome. If it's cooking breakfast, like creativity really truly can be anything. And I do think that like our world really needs more of it. And again, like you're saying, like it's, connecting all of these things for our future, for our planet. Like we are stuck in certain systems that are really blocking and disconnecting us. And it really is tapping into like what feels the best for us. And it can go against the grain, and probably even better if it goes against the grain, because that's probably what we need to do. And I think, my advice would honestly just be like, just move in any possible shape or form that you can, listening to like a playlist. Like, again, I think even just like listening to like good music in itself is like a creative, like experience for yourself, because it just can be inspiring, or it can just move you, or it can, again, shift your energy from like being here to being maybe up here. So, yeah.
I really think that there's so much value in what you're saying. You're disseminating a lot of wisdom. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people who say, oh, I'm not creative, or I don't have that ability, I think their channel's just blocked. I think they're just blocked. I think
we're all creative.
We're all creative. So it's not a question if, or, it's maybe a question of how. What is my best, highest expression of my, signature creativity. And I think each of us have a unique, soul signature, and that we have a unique way to express. And for me, my creativity was blocked for a really, really, really long time. I was a young creative child. I was always writing and, thinking and doing. And then there was this moment in my life where I felt like I had to abandon art. I had to abandon creativity. I had to get serious about my life. I had to, push myself into a place where my education and my occupation would, provide a financial resource. And I literally almost killed myself in that because I'm so not designed to go against my design in that way. And so I think so many of us, have found ourselves kind of trapped or feeling empty or feeling unfulfilled, even though we have all of the things that we're told that we're supposed to have. And we still have this sort of deep, unfulfilled feeling inside of us that just won't go away. And it ends up making us consume more because we're looking to fill that void. And I think that's really the disease of these times, is that, our whole system is kept and upheld by a void and a need to consume. How would you advise people to fill that void without the regular consumption that, so many of us turn to?
My best advice is honestly going for a walk in the woods. Like, I feel like when you can just disconnect from your phone, your tablet, your computer, filling that void for me has always honestly just been getting outside. And I feel like there's so much research behind that actually supports this claim that I'm making. Mm-hmm. Really, truly, it's if we are able to just find ourselves in nature, if it's, going for a bike ride, going for a walk, sitting on a park bench, I just find that when you're able to look outside and you just see how nature still, she provides an abundance of everything. I feel like when I go into the forest, there's just such a different, I think I talk about energy so much, but I really do feel my surroundings and I really navigate the world through my emotions and just what I feel energetically. And I feel like when you walk into nature, you can really kind of take a sigh of relief. And I think there's such a beauty sometimes when you put yourself in environments where they're not man-made. For me, it's even right now, it's something that I just feel that I really realize, or I see when I'm in the suburbs. I'm kind of on the line of Dufferin and Major Mackenzie. So it's suburbs, but you just go 10 minutes and you get into fields. And there's such a beauty where you drive further down north and there's just fields and there's no man-made obstruction. I find that when you can look into nature too, and you're just looking at nature just as how she is, that also lets your imagination flow. That lets your ideas, your thoughts, you can just look out, and it again in itself becomes almost like a meditative process when we're not looking at stuff that we've made or is organized. It's just her. So for me, that's the best way to fill a void.
I think that's such profoundly wise advice. Now, you seem very awake and very attuned, and you're definitely operating at a higher frequency. Did you have an awakening? Were you always like this? How the F are you like this? And
I actually love when you swear. I swear so much. I've been keeping it really.
No, you can swear. You can swear. I'm actually been very well behaved as well for myself. Yes.
Cool. Cause I throw fucks all over the place. So for me, I think I was always, I know I've always been intuitive. Just having a higher awareness of certain situations underneath the surface without, words or things having been told to me. But for me, I think I was very much bogged down. I think for me, it really hit a point in 2018. I was really running myself thin. I burnt out really bad, again, because I was just dealing with the super hustle mindset. I gotta just keep going to get opportunities to make money. And then I just burnt out, and I was I literally physically cannot even picture myself doing this for another 2 years in my industry, because I won't be able to. Mm-hmm. So when I kind of hit that point, I really started to question how I was going to continue. And it really dawned on me that I have to take account myself, my energy, where I am, because I started to notice cyclical patterns in my behavior where I would be really good, and then I would kind of get down and kind of numb myself out with certain things and certain habits. And I was I can't live this life. I know that there's more that I can do, and there's I can just be more productive, but like in a more sustainable sense. And like, I don't have to be going through these kind of like peaks and valleys. So probably at the end of 2018, I really just started to take into account just certain different habits, like really putting the work into like my own meditation practice, into feeding myself good foods, into like really trying to get to sleep like a reasonable hour, because like innately, like I am like a night crawler. I can go to bed at 3, but like, or 4 or 5, but like I just need to go to bed early. So just like taking into consideration like the things that really sustain not only my body, but like my soul, like my mind, and then just tapping more into different, I guess, how do I call this? Not like tools. Yeah, tools. Like I love oracle cards. I really started going to different like energy healers, and also just like giving myself massages like once a month, and like facials, and really just like diving into self-care. And I think within all those kind of practices, just the practice of actually like sitting still and journaling for me. I mean, I've always journaled as a kid, and I find like journaling, I'm the biggest advocate of journaling because I think it's like fucking magical. Like I will look into a journal that I wrote like 10 years ago and just open it to a page, and like I literally have the answer for like a current day problem. You know, I look into a journal, and like there's things that I was writing about for the future, and I'm literally writing what I wrote about like, 5 years ago, and I'm living that future now. So yeah, I think with all that, those practices have helped. And there's just certain teachers out there right now that are really on the cusp of this like new world of the—
Who's inspiring you right now? Like, who would you recommend?
The first book that I read, the first author was a couple years ago, Dr. Joe Dispenza. His work, the first book I read was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I think that was like 5 years ago. So I obviously grabbed his Becoming Supernatural book. I'm like just halfway through it. So that's been really pivotal. Everything behind that. I also read The Emotion Code by another doctor. I'm just looking at my book.
Yeah.
Dr. Bradley Nelson. It's called The Emotion Code. That was really interesting, how a lot of like our ailments or sicknesses can be tied back to certain emotions stuck in our body. And it's really like a whole book about even like almost like tapping into and releasing those emotions. So that was super interesting. And I'm also on The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. But that's its own world entirely. If anyone like is interested, just look it up, because like I'm not going to do any justice.
Thank you so much for sharing what you're reading, because I think that as each of us, I mean, it's happening to everyone on the planet right now, is really the truth. Whether we, want to articulate it as an awakening or whatever it is, we really are. We're having a reset. It's what is unfolding. And it's interesting that there has been a wave of us who seem to have had a bit of a precursor or a pre-awakening. And I've seen it sort of between 2016 to 2019. There's been a bunch of people who, just like yourself, something just wasn't working with the way that it was all set up. You start questioning, like, why am I pushing myself this hard? Why am I not honoring my body more? Why am I not honoring my energy levels? And I think that there's something so profoundly progressive about us women really starting to reclaim our sovereignty through taking care of ourselves, and not continuing to push through this idea that, the system asks and you jump, and, this is the way that it'll be, that we ourselves have our own ability to create the kind of lives that we want to live. And I had a similar experience in that in 2017, just had a complete burnout, a complete breakdown, my physical health, which again, I became so interested in this idea of, the emotional aspect of what is manifesting through the physical. And Louise Hay is another one that's a really interesting teacher around those aspects. And for me, my full burnout was in my third chakra, which was, manifesting as a stomach ailment. And that's my power center. And I was just continuously giving my power away and continuously letting everything take from me and never filling myself back up. And it's, we've been trained, I think, as a society in general, but especially as women, we have been trained that, we have no sovereignty, that, the way we show up in the world is dictated by other people around us. And even just the idea of the male gaze, or this idea of how we must present ourselves. And I think as we start to untangle that, and as us women find our sovereignty again, we begin to hold the frequency of being able to, I don't know, pull together a much more interesting design. Yeah, it's quite powerful. How are you feeling as, a woman person right now on the planet, in your body, in your physical right now? What does it feel like for you?
It feels good. I definitely can see the privilege I have being a woman in a white body living in North America and Canada and Toronto. Definitely comes with a lot of allowance and ease, for sure. I mean, I do feel good in the sense that when I do look around me, I do see so many more women uprising from all cultures, though. Like, our voices are becoming so much stronger. And I feel like the resources at our fingertips now are ridiculous in like a really amazing way, because we can really tap into so much information and knowledge if we want to, shift our lives or live better or strive for more, again, in a very sustainable way. And I think, like you're saying, what's so beautiful is that there has been so many people just like hitting a certain block in their lives where they're like, I can't live this way, and realizing that there's actually like a totally new way of living. And I'm seeing that all around me. I'm seeing women take complete control of, their energy, their lives, and really changing it up for them, and not living like the old school way of like, you have to work hard, you have to like, do the 9 to 5, like you have to do this, this, and this to get this. Like, now literally, like, I see how the ball really is in our court, and like we can really create in any way, shape, and form that we want. I really do think like the possibilities are out there. Like, we do live in like a super high consumer society. There's so much out there. But with that said, like, because there's so much there, like the way that we can be and do is unlimited. And I mean, even like when I take this back to artists, I think now, to be a creative, to be an artist, like you can make a living as an artist anyway. Like, there's just so many avenues. I feel like I know there's avenues that like we haven't even thought of that creatives can just like make it happen. Yeah, as a woman, I mean, I'm really excited. I think the future is really, I think we live in a very interesting time. I do think it's only going to become more interesting. I think this year, 2020 specifically, is a huge catalyst. And I'm really honestly grateful that it's like set in and everything's happened how it's happened, more or less. It's like, I don't think that humans evolve or we change because we're comfortable. I mean, things have to get ugly or really uncomfortable for us to be really moved to want to do more, I think, like collectively. So I do think that this is a beginning of something. And I also feel like when we don't learn certain lessons, like they come back to us. So if we're not learning things right now in this moment, like I 100% see that we're going to be hit with things in the future if we're not changing things right now. So yeah, I think it's exciting. Like, I'm really stoked to see like what the next 5 years brings, what the next decade brings. Like, these are some pivotal times.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And it's so true. I mean, it happens in our own life. If you don't learn the lesson, it keeps coming back. It keeps getting bigger. It keeps getting louder. And, I just don't know how we can't look around and see what is happening and not realize that, it's been happening for a very, very, very long time, and that all of the warning posts and signs and whispers were there. And now, it's just exploding. And even when I think about, the Black Lives Matter movement, like none of this is new stuff. Like none of it is new. It is just, it's being seen. It's the unseen being seen. And I think that it's a profound time for us to really realize that. And rather than even, pointing fingers of where it's all come from, like it's a problem and we need to solve it now. So it's like, I almost at this point, I don't even want to think about even the why anymore. I want to think of the solution. I want to think about the how. I want to think about, what we are going to do to put into action, because it's gone on for far, far too long, and we cannot ignore it. And I think you're right. I think we're just going to see more and more coming forward unless we, swallow that pill and realize that it's time for a real deep cleansing, a real deep change in terms of the way that we approach this gift that, we call life, this earth walk, this whatever you want to say. And I just want to say too, that when you talk about nature and you talk about that, connection back to nature and how nature can magically kind of reorganize you internally. I think that this is something that is a sacred truth. I think that this is something that our Indigenous peoples have known for a very, very long time. And this is another way that the system and the colonization of people in this planet have ripped away our resources. Nature is a resource in more ways than what we, know it to be. It literally is fundamental to life and to us being well. And so again, when you speak of these things, you're talking language of decolonization. And that is so profoundly entrenched in what we're about to do right now. And I think that's the beauty of, art right now, truly and honestly. I think it really is. It speaks to a whole nother level. Is there one last thing you want to leave our listeners with? Please tell us where we can find you. And also please give us your blessing and best advice for how to navigate these times right now, please.
Thank you. Honestly, I just need to say first too, this has been such a pleasure. You yourself are so inspiring. I straight up just gotta say, I'm such a girl fan. The work that you're doing. I mean, even just initially I saw you at Obama, but I was so inspired by all the women that came on stage that day. I literally left that convention just floating, being I'm going to take the world by storm. So, I mean, just thank you for the power that you are, the truth that you bring to the stage, everything that you say. I'm just super inspired by the work that you do. And on my end, I think the best way that we can care for ourselves really is to just find a moment of stillness and just hear or see what it is that we need in that moment. I think, 2020 definitely really made us slow down, but I think one lesson that I saw repeating myself is that even though it was a slower time, there were still ways that I was speeding up. And it's really been a massive lesson, even in slowing down even more. I think there's nothing that can go wrong if we just literally give ourselves the space and time to slow down, because I don't think even just a couple months of, things being thrown off is enough time to really take advantage of what slow can really mean for us, in what ways it can replenish us, regenerate us, bring new ideas to the surface, and also change things for the better in the future. And yeah, we got to love each other. We got to love everyone, all the plants, everything, because it's true. We're really at certain odds in the world. And we're not going to be saving the environment when we're not treating, our brothers and sisters with respect and loyalty and equality, and our Indigenous, brothers and sisters as well. These are voices that have so much wisdom, and they are really the teachers. So yeah, I think there's also a lot to say for just taking a step back and really coming together, because we have so much to learn from another. And this is a point in time where we really truly got to come together. This whole slogan of 2020 is that we're in this together. But are we in this together? We really got to take that up a notch. Mm-hmm. So yeah, having said that, thank you so much again. And you can find me at pretty much my main point of contact really is Instagram. And I'm Anya Mielniczek at Instagram. So my name is ANYAMIELNICZEK.
Beautiful. And we will also take that below in the show notes. And thank you so much, Anya. This has been, I'm just buzzing. I'm buzzing with so much energy right now, just in being able to connect with you and being able to riff with you like this, and know that there are souls and spirits on this planet that are thinking this way and doing these things. It's really is a beautiful gift. So thank you so much for this time. And our listeners will definitely see more of you, I think, with some of our work too, because we're talking about a few little collabs and it's going to be lots of fun. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon again. Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by CPP Investments. At CPP Investments, they never lose sight of the long term. They invest the Canadian Pension Plan Fund to help provide financial security for generations of Canadians.
They diversify the CPP fund across geographies and asset classes to access the best investment opportunities and generate sustainable long-term returns. The fund is now more than $400 billion.
To learn more about their investment performance for Canadians, visit cppinvestments.com.